Thank you, everybody, for joining the Bass Fug podcast. Today is a super special episode. We are joined by Ed Fliss. You may have heard of him. He is Duran Duran Duran. How are you, Ed? Thank you for joining us.
Oh, very good. Thank you for having me.
So I've known you for a while, not personally, but I've followed your career. How did it start? When exactly did you start?
Oh, wow. I guess I started, it's I guess like my whole kind of artistic journey maybe kind of began when I was sort of a kid, I don't know, and 10 or something. And my dad, is it okay to ramble?
Yeah, no, it makes my job easier if you ramble, believe me. And you have so much history that I basically just want to hear your story.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, if you want to hear about how I got into making music, it was through a program that my dad had on his computer at work called Sound Edit, which was just like a kind of 2-track wave editor. And I remember messing around with it, like, you know, doing the kind of Led Zeppelin reverse backwards messages, stuff like this, and just kind of chopping up audio and adding effects and stuff. But it got kind of boring pretty quickly. Then I guess I started actually learning how to play music and get into like making music when I was about 15 or so. I met a friend, really good friend of mine named Tony Gabor, who also makes music, taught me how to play guitar, and he was also like a kind of rapper. So we kind of started revisiting Sound Edit and like beatboxing into it, and then kind of adding effects to the actual beatbox hits, and replacing the hits with other sounds and noises and stuff like that. And I guess that was the very beginning of me making music. We made a lot of music together. He was kind of one of the original members of Duran Duran Duran. It used to be 3 guys. I think we came up with the name like sometime around like 1999, 2000. There was another guy that I met at a video store that I worked at who got me into the sort of DHR, digital hardcore, like Alec Empire kind of stuff. And the 3 of us kind of were Duran 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 for a while, although 3 of us never actually made music together. Kind of a weird story to look back on now. I was sort of throwing parties in Philly, and through throwing parties like Renegades, and I was part of a crew called 215 Noise back in Philadelphia. Kind of made a lot of contacts that ended up allowing me to, you kind of, I guess, throwing shows, you make contacts, and then when you want to go play shows, you kind of hit these contacts up, and it kind of goes from there. That's a long-winded version of how I sort of got my start, I guess. If that makes any sense.
No, it totally does. Because I know you were doing a lot of music that I think now there's so much different styles of music. It's kind of hard to imagine a time where a genre would sort of break through the mainstream and sound different than a lot of other stuff going on. Did you find it hard to get your stuff out there so early, like in 1999, 2001, 2002? Or was Philadelphia really open to that?
I mean, there wasn't many people doing electronic music. I think that's probably, I don't really know, actually. I haven't lived there in about 12 years now, but so it's kind of, you kind of connect with the people around you fairly easily, especially if you throw parties and go out. You start to see the same kind of people over and over again because there's not that many of them. And I remember, I guess one of the people who really sort of taught me about like self-promotion was Jason Forrest. Like, he was really tireless with like sending demos and stuff. So I made a lot of like CDR demos back then, and I think what helped a lot was I was actually one of the, I don't want to say one of the first, but I remember there wasn't many places to get your music online back then. So I had a website courtesy of the guys at Rhinoplex in Pittsburgh, Jeff Cutups and those guys. And I had just basically a site there, which was very basic and just had a bunch of tracks up for free download. And I think that really helped a lot because there wasn't many free download, people giving their stuff away for free download back then.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know. I think also just the stupid name kind of helped. I don't really know. It's not like I really achieved stardom or something like that.
Well, you were known in the underground community for sure.
I guess so.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. I mean, maybe you didn't see it, but you know, I was a hick living in northern New Brunswick, and I had your stuff, you know. So
Wow.
Illegally, but you know, there wasn't any cool record stores. But how did you meet Jason Forrest? Did you guys go way back, or how did that turn out?
I met him actually at Kim's Records in New York, which I guess I don't know if that exists anymore. Kim's Video, it was like really cool, like record store, video store in Manhattan. I was up there for a job interview, I think, and I remember, like, I stopped by there. I would always stop by there to kind of go through the sort of electronic music section. And I remember, like, he was like the only other guy flipping through the breakcore record section. I remember kind of, you know, it was kind of that thing back in the day before you could just sort of download everything or order everything online, when you'd be kind of like elbowing people out of the way to get to the records you wanted. Wow. And it was kind of that scenario where I was sort of elbowing this dude out of the way, and then I was like, actually, you know what, like, this guy's listening to music as me, maybe I should introduce myself. And we started chatting, and I think he had some demo CDs on him, and he was like super nice, and we just sort of kept in touch over email, and we ended up booking him for a party not too long later with Dan Dormouse and a few other people, Basic and stuff. And just sort of became a love affair from there. We ended up touring around a lot of the States and Europe. He was sort of the first of us to, like, our sort of generation of like weird breakcore people to actually like come over to Europe and tour and stuff. And then we kind of saw like, oh, that's actually possible, you know, and he had all the contacts and was like very, very good at like just networking and stuff like that. He ended up, I don't know, like, he ended up releasing my first album and my second album actually he started a label called Cockroach Disco, and I guess that's I don't know how much more I can say about it.
For those that don't know, can you explain what the infamous Cock Rock Disco label was?
Right. Yeah, that was a label started by Jason. I was the first release on it, I think, with my first album, Very Pleasure. I guess it was just sort of one of these, I don't really know how to describe it other than a record label that released pretty weird music, you know. It wasn't really like a normal sort of breakcore label. Like, he put out like loads of different kinds of stuff. I think Jason could probably explain Cocker Disco a lot better than I could. There's still a lot of, I think most of the releases are still available now on the website for free. And I think maybe he might have even, I'm like wanting to like Google it right now on my computer. I think he might have passed over the ownership to other guys who are kind of still releasing stuff. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to give away erroneous information, and I haven't kept up on it in a while.
This is a no fake news podcast, so please don't.
Yeah, I'm just wondering now. This is like not a conversation. It's like people are going to be listening to this and being like, you fucking know it.
No, it's fine. I say shit that's wrong all the time. What is in your opinion? This might sound a little cheesy, but what is the state of breakcore in going into 2020? Because it's a lot different than what it was in, say, 2005, 2006. You know?
Yeah, that's. I don't know. You're probably asking the wrong person. I think it's definitely still around, and I think, I don't know, at least where I live in Berlin, anyways, there's still like breakcore parties, like at least like once every month or so. As for the rest of the world, it's hard for me to say. Like the sound has probably kind of changed a lot, and I don't know, Gabber's kind of come back with the help of like Gabber Eleganza and, you know, Gabber Modus Operandi and stuff like that. It sort of became like somewhat fashionable again. And it makes me wonder if like breakcore is kind of going to make the comeback that it sort of had back in 2005. I don't really know. But it felt like it was a lot bigger in 2004, 2005. But maybe that was just because I was, you know, in my 20s and like playing a lot of breakcore parties. It definitely sort of felt, I guess, media wise then like the next big thing or the new thing or something like that. But, you know, when like V Snares was pumping out loads of tunes and stuff like this.
Those were the days.
But I don't know.
We get one album every 2 years now. It's like, dude. I blame it on the Planet Mu forums. They were like, "Oh, he's releasing too much stuff," and now it's like you get one album a year. It's like, come on, guy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's yeah. I was kind of thinking about that the other day, like back when forums ruled the earth.
Yeah, were a thing. Yeah, it was Planet Mu, the apextwin.nu forum. We Are the Music Makers, and I think there was a couple of other ones that were pretty good. But do you think automation kind of changed breakcore? I don't mean like AI stealing our jobs, but things like, you know, glitch VST and stuff like that. Do you think that sort of changed like the breakcore landscape, and it got to the point where people weren't as fascinated by it? Because like going back to snares, you know, you hear this and you go, "Oh my God, this is like super talent, like produced, like it sounds like it comes from another planet." And then one day you're able to download a program that could kind of, you know, chop up your beats for you automatically. I felt like that's sort of when a lot of the edge of breakcore kind of started to round off. Do you agree with that, or?
I definitely remember a point in like mid 2000s when it started to feel very saturated. Like there were all of a sudden a lot of people doing like a lot of kind of shit met sort of stuff. I think this was back in like MySpace days. I remember getting like what they even called requests back in like MySpace or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, I would get added by a bunch of people who are all making the similar kind of like Amen Gabber Kick kind of breakcore stuff, and it just started to feel not so not so interesting anymore, or just too there. I don't want to say too many cooks. That sounds stupid,
but not dangerous.
I guess, like for me, I always kind of hated the breakcore term, and you know, like it was really interesting to me back in like 99, 2000. They're like fucking old dude, like, but like like back then they never really had a name for it. Like we kind of called digital hardcore or like hard step, and then all of a sudden everybody kind of like settled on breakcore, and sometime in the early 2000s, and it just then like once the sound kind of became more defined, then like I don't know, I started to kind of lose interest, and I kind of stopped identifying as a breakcore artist in a lot of ways. So it's hard for me to say. At some point, I remember at some point me and Dev Null, I just said like, okay, look, I'm done with this, because there were so many like forum discussions about like what is breakcore, what is it, you know what I mean, and people making these documentaries and stuff, and I was like, I'm just out of the game now, you know. I make my own genre, and it's called like laser thrash or something.
Laser thrash, that's awesome.
And then Pete Devnall stole that and made that the title of his album, Laser Thrash. I couldn't use that anymore. But I don't know. It's like once you define the sound for a genre and identify with that genre, you're limiting yourself in a way, right? And the way that I feel.
And it loses all the danger of it too, you know. For me, that genre was so countercultural, because you got to realize at the time it was 1999. It was fucking Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears. There was no band camp. You couldn't find cool shit. If you didn't live in a big city, you were fucked. You were listening to whatever was on MTV, right, or what was on the radio. So if you get a Duran 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 or a Xenopticon or Devnol or whatever, you're going like, oh shit, this is awesome, you know. Because it's so different.
That's kind of true, yeah. I mean, that was the dawn of like downloading music and stuff, which definitely sort of changed a lot of things, and still continues to change a lot of things, I guess, in the like music production landscape. I guess like, I don't know, less of a sound. Breakcore still to me feels like it was a really like, well, I guess it still is kind of like a really nice community of people. That just, I don't know, like a lot of the producers that I idolized eventually sort of became friends, which was really nice. Everybody in the scene was very sort of approachable and stuff. And, that aspect of it, like, I still really kind of treasure.
Yeah.
It's not very often that I listen to much breakcore anymore. That kind of sounds shitty. But still like, really enjoy. I don't know. I still like. There's some artists that I still listen to like a lot, and I will check out their new stuff. And it's really nice to hear out at a party. Sorry, I kind of got off track there.
No, that's fine. I get very nostalgic about the internet communities too. Especially Soulseek is the one that I get really nostalgic about, because it was like really the first time in my life I met anybody outside of my population of 50,000, you know, small town, right, where everyone works at a lumber mill or something, right? And all of a sudden you're talking to guys like guys who are signed to digital hardcore, and they're like, oh yeah, man, like I'm playing these cool parties and abandoned warehouses and stuff, and you're just like, whoa, that is awesome. And but now it's with it's social media, love it or hate it, it really widens that gap. Like it brings everyone together, and you could be part of a community, and you could be living on the edge of a volcano, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess, I don't like, I know everybody, it's super cheesy to talk about it now, but like, I do think that one of the things that really changed everything back in like the 2000s was MySpace, you know? Yeah. And it's like such a like whack thing to talk about now. Oh God, MySpace. But it was the first time that everybody all of a sudden was like connecting to everybody. And you'd have like, you know, like Vanilla Ice would have his like MySpace profile, and you could write to him and stuff. And it was more about like collecting like as many contacts as you could, you know. It was almost like a game you could win. And you had kind of people like Tia Tequila, who like they just kind of got famous because they had so many MySpace friends, you know? Yeah. And then I think like when that kind of died and we went into the Facebook era, it started to get a little bit more like private, you know. People are like more cagey about the people that they add. They just want to add people who are kind of like in their friend circle and stuff like this. Yeah. And it's not such a, I don't know. I don't think it's such a bad thing. It's just different, you know, because social media has been monetized in a completely different way. It's obviously kind of scary now, you know, but it's a tool, right?
When you say it's kind of scary, do you have like sort of like some political reservations about big data? I think everybody does, but I'm just trying to set up the question too. Sometimes I think I'm creating content and I'm using this platform for this machine that is ultimately going to somehow fuck me in the ass in 30 years with some AI takeover. You know what I mean? Like, do you feel kind of weird about that, where you have your Duran 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 Facebook page, presumably, you know, and you're putting your posts out, but you're also feeding this machine and they're kind of, I don't know, profiting off of that? Is that something you think about? Or?
Definitely. I mean, like, you know, with the whole kind of election hacking things happening in the States and stuff, it was, it was like, I think it woke a lot of people up to like the power that social media has. And even personally, I think a lot of people who use it a lot realize the kind of mental health effects it can have on you. It was designed to basically feed into the human brain's reward system, and they knew that, like the same way that kind of gambling or cocaine does in a lot of ways, I think.
Well, that's been proven. There's been Facebook employees saying that they worked with like casinos, like guys who design coin operated machines for the timeline and stuff like that. So you're totally right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of that is sort of like common knowledge now. It's a slippery slope, and a lot of people are bailing out of it or want to bail out of it, but there's sadly like nowhere else to go. I feel like we're going in like a really conspiracy direction now.
Go nuts! You could do whatever. You go nuts. This podcast took a lot of weird twists and turns. I never thought it'd be like this, so I just go with it.
Yeah, I'm not a real like conspiracy theory type of guy, but I
Well, that's conspiracy fact, though. Like with these platforms, right? You aren't talking about really the Illuminati or anything. You're talking about a gigantic monopoly that has a bunch of servers. We could see it on Google Maps, But I got you though. The thing I kind of had a love-hate for, but now I feel like we're so far gone. Any type of activism should have been done 10 years ago. The horse has left the barn, as they say, and it's like you might as well just like it, right? There's because it's not like you're getting that stuff back, But let's switch it up a little bit. Why did you move?
To Berlin.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I got a little bit fed up with Philadelphia at some point. I don't know. I felt like I never really kind of fit in there. I did a lot. I did a lot of work trying to, throw parties and like kind of start a bit of a scene. And then you kind of see this sort of cycle that you probably see in a lot of American cities where you find a really cool venue. Cause I mean, a lot of like, I don't know if you've read that, David Byrne book.
What's it called? I've never read any David Byrne books, but
it's called
I'm more of a podcast guy myself. Shout out to Facebook.
Anyway, it's called How Music Works, and he basically puts forward that like music is like, people think that people make music based on the kind of instruments that they have available to them at the time, like based on the materials that they have. But like, and then he kind of posits that it's actually because of the venues that are around at the time that people make music for the kind of venues that they go to hear music in.
Well, in his case, like, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he talked about, when he would go to CBGB's, and then that space had its own kind of sound, and it was like dampened by all the weird stuff around, and people made music that would sound good in that space, like this really mid-rangey kind of like punk rock. And I mean, anyway, you can read the chapter. It's super interesting. But to go back to it, I guess like a lot of scenes kind of revolve around really cool venues. And you have this cycle, I think, in American cities of, you find a cool venue, you start to throw parties there, and then after you get maybe about a year, maybe a year and a half before it gets so popular that like the police come and like crush it, or it gets bought out and changed into something else. Yeah. And it was really disheartening for a long time. And some people were very tireless about it. They would just like threw parties nonstop and didn't care, would always find a different venue, knew how to network. But for me, it kind of beat me down after a while. And it got to a point as well that I think I knew more people living in Berlin than I did in Philadelphia, especially people who made music. And I don't know, like I came here a few times on tour, and it was a really cheap and easy place to move. It seemed like a lot of people were doing it. So it came to a point in my life where I think I was going on tour with Xenopticon at the time, maybe 2008. and I kind of didn't have anything holding me back in Philly at the time. I just broken up with my girlfriend. I was working this kind of really crappy graveyard shift job at Whole Foods. And I was like, actually, there's no reason. I wasn't in school anymore. And I said, like, hey, I'm just going to try to do it and see what happens. And I reached out to some people I knew who were here, and somebody wrote back and said, like, yeah, actually, I'm leaving my studio. I'm moving back to London. You can just come live with me, and then take the studio over when I leave in a month. And I figured, like, okay, maybe if I can make it work for 6 months to a year, then at least I can say that I did it. And somehow everything just sort of worked out. And yeah, I've been here for coming up on 12 years now.
That's awesome. It sounds difficult to just get up and move to Berlin. There's probably a lot of bureaucracy.
I mean, I came here with next to nothing, and I didn't really know any German or anything at the time. I was just playing shows, and that worked for about a year or two, and then I kind of got various gigs. I was lucky to have people who helped me out with kind of sorting out the bureaucratic and visa stuff. Aaron Spector and his girlfriend May Lee were like really big help, and Jason Forrest and like a bunch of people I knew here who had gone through the same process kind of like assisted me. And it's a nightmare. I mean, the harder part, but it's like if you want to do it, you can do it. It's the only country in Europe where you can actually apply for a visa after you're already here. So you just kind of show up, and it was annoying to go through the whole thing myself without knowing the system. In retrospect, I should have just probably hired a lawyer or somebody who knew how to do it better than me. But it's possible as an artist still to kind of move here and live here and get a visa. And the harder thing I think is just leaving behind all my friends and family. You know, that's like a lot of heartache for like a good couple of years. But yeah, I'm really glad that I did it. I think I still wake up very happy that I live in this city. I don't know if it's forever, but it's been a while now.
You've been on a lot of labels. You've been on, off the top of my head, I think Cock Rock Disco. You were on Schematic, I think. Tiger Beat 6 and Peace Off. Was this because you sent out demos, or was it more of through your own promotion you met other people? What is the best way to get on a label for an artist, I guess, is the veiled question.
Yeah, I mean, we used to kind of call it the checklist, you know. It's like there were these kind of I don't know, there was like a lot of labels that I really liked, and I had their records and stuff. And I don't know, I think I met a lot of the people who own those labels through playing shows, which isn't, I guess, like a very good piece of advice, but it was generally more of like a kind of personal connection. I would meet, like, Peace Off, I met, I played for Frank Rotator at, he did these anti-cartel parties in Rennes, and which were pretty legendary. And I played at one of those, and he ended up he was like begging me for a record and stuff. And Tiger Beat, I knew Miguel, and I sent him a bunch of stuff. I don't know, I think early on, I used to send out loads of demos, maybe like once every week. Like I would send out a CDR to somebody. I was a lot more motivated. I guess early 20s would be like, yeah, like, if you don't like this song, I'll write 20 more songs, you know? I don't know what the best way to get it onto a label is now. I guess, but for me, like, I guess, I mean, for me, it's like the connection with the label is a lot more important. Like I look at it as sort of more like a symbiotic kind of relationship rather than somebody who just like releases my stuff. Like, and I'm probably like a bit of a nightmare to work with in this respect, but I really like kind of the process of like putting together a release with a label owner, you know? So for me, it's more, I guess, about sort of the the connection and the like way that I have to work with that person, you know? Like I like to kind of shoot ideas back and forth, and I like to have them sort of give me feedback on tracks and pick the tracks out themselves. I'm very bad, like myself, at just conceiving of a release from start to finish. Some people like Sick Boy and stuff like this, they'll just have a release fully formed in their mind, and all they have to do is create it. They're like, oh, I have a concept, I know what the cover is going to be, you know. They're like, but for me, I just make tracks and then probably send out a bunch of stuff and to people but now I guess I'll probably just send a Dropbox folder to somebody and be like, hey, here's some tunes, let me know if you like any of them. Sorry, it's not like very good very practical advice.
No, but and now we're, like you said earlier, you're one of the pioneers of releasing music for free. Now you could just get a fucking Bandcamp and put it out yourself, you know. A lot of this,
the Bandcamp is pretty powerful, and like it's like one of the companies that I really kind of like what they're doing, and it's a good platform as well. I think when they find good weird music, they definitely kind of promote it as well. They're not just kind of promoting like the most I don't know how to say that, market friendly kind of stuff. Yeah, and I like their weekly articles about weird genres and stuff like that. You know, you could discover new stuff. Do you know what though? One thing, if anyone from Bandcamp is listening, you got to add one of those players at the bottom, because you know you're listening to an album and you want to go still browse the site, and then it stops the music, and you're like, God damn it, right? You know, on SoundCloud you can listen to the song and go to other people's profiles. They need to merge that. Imagine that's probably somewhat calculated so that people they want people to buy the releases, right?
Yeah, I guess.
It's like it's a catch-22. They probably I don't know. I'm not speaking for Bandcamp. Maybe they should do that. But it feels like they probably have to tread a line where, like, if they make it too much like SoundCloud, nobody will buy the releases, right?
Yeah, I guess true. Good point. What software do you use to produce? What were you using back in the day, and what do you find yourself using now?
Like I said before, we started off using Sound Edit, which is just sort of like 2-track wave editor thing. And then we found something, like I remember at the dawn of the internet in 1995, like I was looking for something similar to Sound Edit. And I found something called Sound Maker, which not too many people know about. It was like this kind of it was like a multi-track wave editor with a bunch of effects in it. I think even like Mike Norris made a bunch of like spectral effects in there and stuff. And that was the thing that I produced like most of my first album on. I actually had like a CDR release as Edgeless too, like back in like 99, that I was just selling at local record stores, and that was also all made on Sound Maker. I mean, it was like glitchy and buggy, but it was super amazing to have control over the wave. Like back then, it was like really limited by the amount of computing power you had. So I could probably only make like a minute of music at a time, and then I'd have to bounce it down and sort of stitch songs together that way. And there was a lot of math involved, like because it wasn't really like you edited things by the beats on a grid like you can now. Like I had to do everything by like sample length. So
wow.
You know, 8,000 samples was like one beat, you know, and then if I wanted to like a measure was like 32,000 and stuff like that. I remember I had like a calculator, and I would just try to. I think a lot of the reason why my tracks turned out so fast was because like the most easily divisible number, 8,000 samples for a beat at 44K sample rate was just ended up being like 220 BPM or something. And then eventually I moved on to using Ableton Live like around 2003. I won it in like, I don't know if you remember, like people used to do these like laptop battles back in like the early 2000s. They were kind of a thing.
Battles. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, they were in like a bunch of different cities. It sort of became like a thing, and I think they had the main one started in Seattle, maybe at like Decibel Festival or something. But they had a lot of them all over the country, and it was basically just, you know, laptop musicians would sort of play a song for 5 minutes or something, and then you had like a panel of judges. And I did one in San Francisco, and the judges fucking hated me. I still remember like seeing one of them like actually like holding their ears like while I was playing, like being like, "Oh God, make it stop!" But the crowd like loved me. You know, I was like crowd favorite. So there was like the guy the judges picked, and then me, and it was like a huge upset. And then like they were like, "Okay, you can have one prize," and I was like, "Okay, I'll take Ableton," because I knew that I could sell it for the most on eBay. And then like I ended up, I guess, opening it up when I got back to Philadelphia and playing around with it. Like, oh, it's actually like quite cool. You just throw break beats in and they just work. You know, I don't have to like sit there for 10 minutes while the time stretch algorithm like works on it and stuff. So I slowly switched over to using Live. Like it would kind of go back and forth, like make beats in SoundMaker and then throw them into Live and stuff like that for a while. And then I think probably around version 4 or 5, I switched over to using Live completely. And I've been using that ever since, pretty much all in the box. I never was like a huge gearhead. I have a few little boxes like vocals and stuff like that. But yeah, my main instrument is Live. And I spent a lot of time collecting every VST you could imagine, but over the past few years I've tried to scale it down and just get a bit more try to minimize my options, I guess. What's
your favorite VSTs that you like using?
Oh wow. What a question. Yeah, I mean, like I'm pretty into distortion. I think that's, you know, nothing changes the character of a sound quite like it. And probably there's not that many like amazing distortion effects, but I think probably my favorite one is Isotope Trash. And maybe I also not so much anymore, but I really like the D16 Devastor. What else? I don't know. Like, I mean, like, oh, I just got the notification that can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. I think my AirPod just made the sound that they might be dying soon.
Okay.
I might have to switch over. What was I saying? Yeah, like, Ozone I use on almost pretty much every track for mastering and stuff and imaging. I try to generally lately stick to the built-in Live effects just to kind of keep it more minimal. Yeah, it's hard to go through the history of like VSTs and stuff. For synths and stuff, I mean, like Butzilla is pretty amazing, and all the Yuhei stuff is like pretty great. And I mean, I guess the two things that I use like on most tracks, my go-to like synths are like the Audio Realism bassline and the Synplant. You know that one?
No, never heard of it. No.
Okay.
Cool. Synlength. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Not. It's like a plant-based.
Oh, plants.
VST. Yeah. It's sort of like a seedling like that you hatch and then like it sprouts out and each note is a different like vine that grows out of it.
Oh, weird.
And then when you like one of the notes, you can sort of clone the vine. It's really cool. And then you can actually go in and edit the quote unquote like DNA of the little like life you created.
That sounds interesting.
It's cool. Yeah, I use that one like a lot, probably more than anything.
So I'm guessing that when you play live, you're since you're in the box, you're using Ableton as well.
Yeah.
What is it different like to play live with Ableton than it is to produce, or I guess that's what it's meant for? No. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it was what it was made for. Now it's definitely a lot more of a production tool. Yeah, I mean, it involves just kind of moving things over to session view, and there's a lot of different ways to play live. But I guess it's sort of about when you're playing electronic music, how many choices you want to have and how much you want to leave up to chance, right?
When you're touring, how do you organize a tour? Do you have someone that does that for you, or do you? Because it sounds like like a pain in the ass sometimes having to get papers together, or do you just sneak the laptop in and go somewhere and play a warehouse and then
Well,
get out, or what?
I'm going to, my AirPods are dying. I'm going to switch over.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll put
Yeah,
it
I'm
on
really
record.
quiet.
Well, everybody, since I don't like editing, I'll
You there?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Is this like way worse quality?
It's actually 20,000 times better quality. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just like, oh fuck, oh well. Yeah. Cool. So I was
You
actually,
want to start the interview over again?
No, that's fine. That's fine. 'Cause I think it's late for you right now, huh?
It's 5:30 or 5:46 actually, so it's fine.
PM or AM? PM. Okay, good.
Maybe we can edit that part out.
Okay, excellent. We were talking about touring. I was asking you what it's like to tour and how you set up a tour. How do you play overseas? You know, how do you play in these countries you've never heard of in your life before, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I did my first tours, I guess I got a lot of the contacts from Jason, or just, I mean, would write to other people who, I guess, you know, you could write things on forums and stuff like this. Like you just kind of collected any contact that you knew from any city and would write them and be like, hey, like I'm coming. Do you know anybody who puts on shows? Soul Seek, wherever. And like somebody generally knows somebody, right? Who puts on shows. And it's just kind of like a relentless amount of emailing, I guess, and like negotiations for, yeah. I mean, the other route you can go obviously is to hook up with a booking agent, which is probably a lot easier, and they have all the kind of contacts. I was kind of lucky, I guess, early on that I had a really good booking agent via Cockroach Disco called Planet Rock here in Berlin. They organize a lot of like my early tours for me. Yeah, like how do you do it now? I don't know. I guess, I mean, now it's like a lot easier to see who's doing parties and who's throwing them via Facebook, and then you can just probably write to the people who organize the party and be like, hey, I want to play. Is there any way I can do it? I'm coming through on this day. And I guess the easiest thing to do back then was just to be like, you buy the flight and then it's like, all right, I'm going. So you let people know, like, I'm going to be here between this time and this time. Like, what do you got? Yeah. And then dates kind of pop up and you try to make them work.
It makes sense. It's very sensible. I see a lot of people doing that in Facebook groups, just to, reaching out and asking if there's anything there. Kind of ballsy move if you already buy the plane ticket, but yeah,
I mean, if you find a good, I guess there's like different times a year which were better, especially in Europe. Like obviously you probably don't want to be touring now around Christmas time, and in August everyone kind of like goes on vacation and stuff. And there's times which are better for festivals. I don't play like that many huge amounts of shows anymore, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to be said for making it like well timed.
Who were your music idols when you first started to produce, and even now as you grow? Because I know a lot of people associate you with breakcore, but not all your songs are breakcore, right? Some of your stuff is take this as a compliment, more kind of on the mainstream side of electronic music sometimes, like some of your tracks might sound like a Crystal Method or something, the next track will be a brutal breakcore song, but there are different things going on. So I'm curious who you looked up to and who were sort of your mentors and music producer idols.
I mean, the first kind of electronic music that I really got into was, I mean, like I remember a friend of mine, when we were teenagers, we were always looking for like the most bugging music, and like a friend of mine was like, oh yeah, like I heard about this stuff, it's like techno but with no words, because we just thought techno had like words like house back then. It was like trance. I remember like buying these like trance CDs, but the first stuff I ever really remember being like super amazed by was like when I got like Aphex Twin Venolin and Auteca Tri Repete,
and like Square Pusher, Hard Normal Daddy. These were sort of like our like Bibles when we were teenagers and stuff. And I guess those were pretty big influences on me, and continue to be for sure. I guess at the moment, like electronic music wise, still I listen to, you know, Le Pest is a huge one, especially his live sets. I think one of the best things happening right now. People like Monster X, always really like looked up to Xenopticon and stuff like this. And I don't know, also the sort of like death chant hardcore kind of stuff I always really liked. I don't know, it's too many to name, really.
Yeah. I want to, because we're getting towards the end of the hour. Thank you very much. I totally appreciate you for this interview. It's been very, very awesome. I want to go through a couple of your releases, and I want to see what you have to say about them now, and if you could tell us a little bit about, I guess, the production and how it kind of went. So I'm going to rattle off some of your releases. I remember one of the first things I've ever heard of yours had the most ridiculous album cover I've ever seen. It was Very Pleasure. Can you talk about that a bit?
Very Pleasure was the first release I ever had.
Who did the album art? How did that happen?
Album art was a guy called William Flagel, aka Stunt Rock.
Oh, yes.
He was kind of like a big idol of mine. He did some records on Dormouse's label Addict, which were like pretty legendary.
He's on D-Trash too. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't really have. He just kind of had his own style, you know, and super like ridiculous and like and super don't give a fuck style. And he did. He was like a graphic designer too, and he said he wanted to do. I don't know how it ended up happening. And I think he made that album cover just to kind of like fuck with me, you know? He was like, here it is, you know? And I was like, yeah, cool. Let's just do it, you know? And it took a lot of time to convince Jason that should be the album cover. He was like pretty against it, but I think it really ended up like selling the record because it was so ridiculous and super colorful and just like, I don't know, looking back on it now, it's quite beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Obviously it was, you know, not the easiest thing to show my parents. I think that like, actually my cousin like brought it in, like when he was pretty young, they brought it into school for his like show and tell, being like, oh, this is my cousin, he makes music and stuff, and like played it for his like third grade class or something, which is kind of horrifying to think about. But yeah, I mean, it was it's like a collection of like many tracks that kind of came together over the years. It was still pretty dirty. It's hard for me to listen to now because the production is so bad. But I mean, it's like one of those things. Like a lot of people still point to that record and you know, wish that I made music like that still. But I just can't. I'm not using that program anymore, and I sort of care a little bit too much about production. But yeah, it was definitely an exciting moment in my life. I can't believe that I actually did that, like most of the things in my life.
So you don't want to revisit that sound just out of your own, I guess, progression as a producer?
Probably not. I don't know. Maybe it's probably coming up on like the 30-year anniversary now or something like that, or 20-year, I don't know. And so I don't know, it might be fun to do like a re-release or something. But I mean, Casio SK1 and a wave editor, I don't know if I could go back there, but hey, you know, fuck it, why not?
Well, Casio SK1s are really expensive now. They're like $200 on eBay. So.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, they're going up there. How about Overhard?
Yeah, that was the second album, I guess 5 years later, keeping to my schedule of like one album every 5 years.
Yeah.
I remember like that was an album that I was trying to put together with Planet Move for a long time because I released a 12-inch on Planet Move that went really well, and was trying to negotiate with Mike for a long time over an album, and like I made like I don't know, like 100 tracks or something like this, and then it just wasn't kind of coming together. And then I remember I sat down with Jason on the train once after a show in Belgium on the way to somewhere else, and like we just kind of were like, all right, let's do it. And then we, after like an hour of track selection, we basically had the record figured out. The artwork took a really long time. It was also William Plagle again who did the first album cover. It took a long time for him to make that. I was never really super happy with it. I don't think he was either. It was like based on a photo that he sort of found, I think at a lot of people think it's me, but it's not. It's like kind of based on this like photo of a sailor that he found somewhere. I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, it ended up taking so long that we were just like, okay, let's just do it. And, I think the inside cover is like, he took these photos of like Betamax porn that he had, and sort of like took them in a way that you couldn't really tell what was going on, just like parts of the screen, the video screen. And that was quite cool. And I think we wanted to make that the cover and also the CD as well. But then the CD pressing plant like nixed it when they found out what was going on.
Oh, wow. Huh. Yeah,
I guess it was one of the things where one of the employees saw it and then they thought it was really funny. So they made a bunch of photocopies, and then they got back to the bosses and they were like, no, we're not doing that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny to think about now. But I'm still like pretty proud of that album. Actually, they like sonically, like I still go back and listen to some of those tunes sometime. And I like the way that it sort of progresses from like a slower tempo to like pretty hectic at the end.
When you're putting together your releases, I guess you just sort of told us that you had like a bunch of songs and you sat down and kind of put them together. Is that always the process, or do you have like a process for putting together albums that's not just grabbing the top 10 of like a bunch and then putting them out?
Yeah, like I said, like my process isn't really very like release focused. When I make a tune that I really like, I really will try to like milk the idea as long as I can to see if I can make it into like a full release that all sounds the same. But generally, like it's sort of like clones that just get worse, like. So it's maybe like the second track will be okay, and the third track is like really not doing it anymore. As far as like like keeping a template of the song that you really liked. But my process is really more just about like sitting down and whatever comes out, and it's more about the rush of writing a song and then having a plan. It's probably a good metaphor for how I lived most of my life too. But yeah, like I said before, like that's why it's kind of important to me to have a good relationship with the label owner that kind of understands and you like the direction that they go in as well, so that you can kind of sit down and collaborate on a record together and put out something that fits for them and that you really like as well. Because it's also tough for me to judge like how people are going to like tunes. Sometimes the things that I think are the stupidest thing ever are like people's favorite, Yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah. My favorite album name of yours, Duran Duran Duran, Duran.
Yeah, that was my most recent album, which I guess you can see. I mean, you can't see it. Obviously, the audience can't see it, but it's on the wall behind me. That came out like 5 years, I think, exactly after Overhard, on a label called Power Vacuum. That I really liked. It was a guy called Milo Smee who makes music as Bintis. And I'd met him a few times around Berlin. I sent him, I basically just like sent him like a handful of Acidy tunes that I thought would be cool for the label. And he was like, yeah, these are all great. Let's do a release, which I was surprised by. And then I was like, cool, here's some more. And he was like, wow, these are even better. Let's just make it a full album. And I think it was maybe the only full album that he'd put out on the label. The cover art also took a long time. It was like these. I was on it's sort of a long story, but I was on a compilation. That's the way he kind of likes to do his releases. Like he puts out these Vectors compilations, and then one person from the compilation will be the next release, sort of like teaser sort of thing. And I had a track on this Vectors compilation he did called Drat Jam, and he made a video for the like, sort of compilation, just like, you know, small bits of the songs. And there was a part of the video which was like these buildings sort of rising out of meat. And I was like, that's really cool. We went through a lot of people who we thought would be great for the album cover, and tried to, all the people that we agreed on were either too busy or just never got back to us. So I kind of revisited this video and said, like, this was really cool. Can we just like take a still from this and make it the cover? And then he contacted the guys who made it, and they, whose names I sadly cannot remember now, because they were awesome. And then they started like working with photos of meat that they took and running through all these mathematical formulas, and made a video, and then took a still of it, which ended up becoming the cover after some debate. It was also a sort of a long process between me and Milo of collaborating on which tracks should be on the album and which order they should go in. Listening back to it now, like, I was taken aback after I listened back to it after like a year or so, like, oh wow, there's actually like pretty much no melodies on this album. You know, it's all like pretty rhythm driven. But that's also the kind of style of like Power Vacuum as well. It's like very like in your face, like punching drum machine stuff.
Last one, Choose Death. Is this a play on Train Spotting's Choose Life? Or what's going on there?
Yeah, that was.
What is with the hot dog? I was staring at that for an hour trying to figure out.
That is a typical East German dish, I guess you could say, like street food thing called a Kettwurst. Kettwurst, which is literally like you take a bun and then you stick it on this like metal rod, which is heated, which then I guess sort of toasts the inside of the bun a bit, and then like makes a hole inside the bun. And then what you do then is you take like a hot dog or a sandwich, a wurst, and then dip that in ketchup, and then you stick it into the hole that the bun is made, and that's a Kettwurst. And there was a guy at work who also makes music that you might know, called Andrew Peckler, and he had that photo. He took that photo at a Kettwurst stand somewhere around Berlin, and we were just like, I don't know, I was amazed at how like weirdly like pornographic they sort of made the Kettwurst look. Like it looked like it got caught doing something bad, you know. Yeah. Like it's got this weird shading behind it, and like the lighting, it's just like, it's super weird. And I definitely wanted to have something more photographic for the cover. That like really took a long time, actually. It was a label that contacted me from Bristol, and they wanted to just do like a download. And like a lot of people kind of contact me, and it's weird, like even though we're moving into a digital age, and I like kind of believe in my heart that most music should just be free now, because who cares? Yeah. And like releases are just sort of creating like pollution. But like still I hold on to this thing like, okay, like can we just do some sort of physical release so that there's an artifact, you know, when one day when like SoundCloud and Bandcamp die, we could at least say like, oh, this happened. Yeah. So we did a cassette, which I think I made at a pressing plant in Leipzig. And it was like a very sort of junglecore type label. So we picked four like kind of jungly tracks for the A side, and then 4 remixes for the B side.
Shout out to Lafo.
Yeah, Lafo, fellow Canadian, right?
Yeah, he's in Montreal. Yeah. We see him all the time.
Cool. Yeah. I always loved his music. I always wanted to do something with him. I played a few gigs with him. But yeah, and like when I was coming up to thinking about people who could be good for remixes, I was like, yeah, man, we should definitely do something with Lafo. And his remix turned out like amazing. A super talented guy.
I've been meaning to interview him, but that means I'd have to leave my apartment. And so I rather interview people in Germany so I can use voice over IP than have to go in real life. But
that the song wasn't originally called Choose Death. I can't remember what I called it. And I went through a bunch of different names, and then I don't know why I decided on that one. It seems a bit silly.
So, sorry.
Say again.
No. You go. I was gonna ask.
Yeah, that's all. I guess I have to say about it. Some of the songs in there are older. Some of them are newer. Most of my releases are like that. You can't really tell, but even Duran, there's like a song on there I think that was a remix I did for Exilon originally from like 2005 or something. But yeah.
What are your future projects coming up as we wrap up the interview?
Yeah, the thing I've been working on now, which is another acid release for. Do you know this guy DJ Rainbow Ejaculation?
No, I do not, but I'm going to Google him now.
He's a legendary guy. He did an album on Cockheart Disco too, which is amazing, and also has like mind blowing cover art. And it's like he was kind of a little bit part of this sort of like Australian System Corrupt crew. He also made music as Rank Sinatra, where he would just kind of like wear corpse paint and like a suit and sing like kind of 80s cover songs through a distortion pedal, like black metal style. And now he has a label
called like Bloody Fist stuff, right?
It wasn't very Bloody Fist style, actually. It was sort of that second wave of like people like Toe Cutter and
Passenger shit.
Yeah, definitely. But now he makes acid music. I think and he has a label called Gastric Acid.
Nice.
And he hit me up recently and was like, "Hey, are you still up for doing a Gastric Acid release?" And I really had no memory of agreeing to that, but I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like I had a bunch of like acid tracks laying around, like 5 or 6, and I was like, "Do you like any of these?" And he was like, "Yeah, these are all great. There's the release right there." So it's also an old download label. And what it's going to be is a like pink USB stick on a kind of like fake gold chain.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm not sure what we're going to call it yet. I think I have a name, but I can't remember. That's the next thing I have coming up, and I don't really have anything kind of scheduled after that. Just going like one release at a time here. Would be cool to do like another more dancey 12-inch for Power Vacuum at some point, but I mean, like, yeah, I don't want to speculate right now. That's all that I can really promise will happen one day.
Mr. Fliss, thank you very much for your gracious 1 hour. I totally appreciate it. This is a great interview. Where can we find you online?
You can check my SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/DuranDuranDuran or bandcamp.com/DuranDuranDuran. I don't know if my Rhinoplex site is still up. It would be pretty funny to see. But yeah, I don't have like an official website or anything like that. And I don't post as much as I should. I'm sorry about that. But like, yeah, that's where you can find most of my music if you want to hear it.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. This is an honor.
It's very nice of you to say that. It was really fun for me too.
Cool. Thank you very much. Totally appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, William.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Bass Funk Podcast. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, share, rate us in your iTunes or your podcast aggregator, whatever. Subscribe to our new YouTube channel because we're publishing there now too. We got all the social medias. If you think you should be on the show, if you know somebody who's making cool stuff and should be on here, send us a message on Facebook. You'll find us. Use a search engine, bassfunk.com. Thank you for all of the support. Without you, this podcast wouldn't be listened to. Thank you very much, and have a good day.